This is a Harbor Freight lathe, and they typically come with these 3-inch 3-jaw chucks, but I got a 4-inch 4-jaw chuck, and it doesn't fit right on. I had to build my own adapter plate, take all the measurements and everything, and put the holes in there to go from the plate to my chuck. But I'm really excited that this fits on here, and it can do a lot of different things than the standard 3-jaw chuck for irregular shaped parts, and if I really need to do something bigger than my 3-jaw can handle, I can use the 4-jaw in the same way. So I bought this off of eBay. It was one of the lower cost ones, but let me take this off. There's just these 3 nuts on the back. These are the same 3 nuts that hold my 3-jaw on. Here we go. You can get these nuts off. They can be a little bit tricky behind here, but it's the same thing for the 3-jaw chuck actually. All 3 nuts are off, and now the whole assembly comes off, and it reveals 4 more screws that hold my converter to my chuck. I'll go ahead and take these bolts out. These are modified to fit the plate with a flathead and a countersink added in. And also explain how I made the converter plate. It came out of a solid piece of stock. It was initially a square, and then I drilled all of the holes starting with the center and then the others based on the measurements that I took from my plate and the 4-jaw chuck. And then, there we go, this whole thing can come off. After the holes were drilled, I bored this out to size, and then I could clamp this with the ID jaws to face both sides, and then I cut the corners of the square off to make it a little bit easier to finish that diameter on the lathe. And the last thing I did after countersinking the holes was to surface grind to make sure that it's perfectly parallel between my my spindle here and my chuck, so that there's no extra run out from this converter plate. These are the screws that fit through here with the nuts on the end, and there's actually nothing holding them in place except when they're on here. They can't fall out because their head is into the chuck here, and there's also nothing keeping them from spinning except friction. But whenever it's up in the spindle here, that friction is enough that I can actually spin the nuts on and tighten them, and I don't need anything to actually fasten these screws in place. Now I'll reassemble it. I'll throw it back onto the spindle and spin it up. It's all mounted, stable, so I'll go ahead and spin it up. I think it's pretty amazing that this jaw is so big that when the chuck jaws are flipped this way, I can hold my old chuck in my new chuck. Four-jaw chucks are useful and can hold just about anything, but because like this one, for example, is not universal, it means each of the jaws move independently. Things can be off-center, and when anything is off-center and it's spinning quickly, then it's going to want to sort of bounce around. It's going to be unbalanced, and especially on a small machine like this, we'll probably see the whole thing start to shake. So you want to be careful with anything off balance, and same thing goes for turning between centers. That's why a lot of times it's easier to just stick with your 3-jaw universal chuck and spin round parts. I'm super excited to start using this thing. They're useful for so much. Square parts, really you can hold anything in a 4-jaw independent chuck. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how this assembly goes together, and maybe you can try mounting one of your own new chucks on a lathe.